Hello, and welcome back to more Films Under Constant Critique, where we take a look at films, some good, some bad, and some downright awful. I'm Baikov, Bongo Baikov, joined by our host, Zaria, Maverick Dren Zaria. And this week, we're taking a look at the 1973 film, Live and Let Die.
I'm so tempted to include the theme song for this one.
It's such a good theme song.
But man, I hate copyright bullshit so much.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I remember when I was young and my heart was an open book. Okay, so yeah, this is gonna be a fun one to talk about. Okay. This Live and Let Die was the 8th James Bond movie done by Eon Productions. It was released June 27th, 1973 in the United States, and a month later in the United Kingdom. It cost $7 million and made $161.8 million. So it was...
That's pretty good. That's a pretty solid return.
It was one of the most successful films of 1973. I'm trying to remember how much it made compared to like other Bond movies, though. I think that's about as much.
Oh, so this would have been the same year as The Exorcist.
Imagine going to see The Exorcist and Live and Let Die the same year.
And that's also the year American Graffiti came out. The Sting.
And yeah, it did make more money than the previous films, On Her Majesty's Secret Service and Diamonds Are Forever, which is very important because if this hadn't been successful, we might not have had any more of these.
Yeah.
Because Connery and Lazenby, they didn't want to do any more movies. They really needed someone else to take the mantle here. It was directed by Guy Hamilton.
Haven't heard that name before.
He directed 3 other Bond movies, those being Goldfinger. You might have heard of that one.
Impossible.
No, Mr. Bond, I expect you to die.
To die.
I love that movie so much. Diamonds Are Forever. He directed Diamonds Are Forever. This one, obviously. And The Man with the Golden Gun.
Huh.
So, kind of mixed as far as Bond movies go. This was the second to last movie produced by Albert R. Cubby Broccoli and Harry Saltzman.
Ooh.
Because...
Getting close to the... Yeah?
Saltzman stopped producing them after Man with the Golden Gun. I don't remember the exact reasoning why, but I guess he's like, I'm done. After that one. So from here on out, it was just Cubby Broccoli for a while. It was written by Tom Mankiewicz, and this was the second of 3 Bond movies where he got screenwriting credit. The others being Diamonds Are Forever and Man with the Golden Gun.
So he did a couple just in a row.
Yeah, and he also did uncredited writing on The Spy Who Loved Me and Moonraker. So a lot of Roger Moore. A lot of Roger Moore stuff. We've also had him on the podcast before because he was an uncredited creative consultant on the first 2 Superman movies.
Oh, that's interesting, actually. Huh.
This is an adaptation of the second Ian Fleming book.
Sticking to the tried and true method of just adapting these whenever you want to, in no order.
And there's a few similarities and quite a lot of deviations. The setting is the same. One huge difference is that the book is way more racist than the movie.
Oh no. That's not a good sign.
Let me put it this way. There's one chapter that I can't say the name of.
That's not a good sign.
There's a certain word that starts with N that I can't say. There is no Kananga, only Mr. Big. That sounds like Ghostbusters. Okay. There is no Dana, only Zool. Mr. Big works for Smersh.
Oh, okay.
Because in a lot of the early Bond books, the villains work for Smersh rather than Spectre. Spectre didn't show up in the books until Thunderball, I think. But then they changed that for the movies. But anyway. Mr. Big's plan is to smuggle gold coins and buried treasure. So not the same plot as the movie. Solitaire is in the book, and like in the movie, she's a fortune teller who decides to work for Bond instead, although she doesn't lose her powers to Bond's penis, like in the movie.
There's a lot to talk about with that.
Felix Leiter gets a bigger role in this one.
Yep.
But it resembles his role in License to Kill way more, which if we ever do that one on the podcast, I'll talk about that there. And interestingly, he's played by the same actors in the same actor in both of these movies. So.
Oh, that's interesting.
Fleming originally wanted to kill off Felix Leiter in this one, but was persuaded not to. One thing that's interesting, Quarrel is in both the Live and Let Die book and the Dr. No book.
Okay.
Which that book came out after this one. But if you remember...
In this one, in the movie, it's his son, right?
If you remember, Quarrel dies in the movie Dr. No. So because Live and Let Die, the movie, came out afterwards, they made him Quarrel's son. Quarrel Jr. in the movie. So yeah. That's a bit of fun.
I like how they didn't even bother coming up with a new name for his son. They just called him Quarrel Jr.
Yeah, that's pretty good. Okay, so... the cast. We have Roger Moore. His first appearance as James Bond. And he was the oldest Bond actor because he was 45 in his first movie and 57 in his last one.
That's a pretty big age range.
He was around. He played Bond for such a long time. It's ridiculous.
And how many movies was he in? Was it at 7?
7, yes.
That's a lot of Bond movies.
I know. Before Bond, he was more of a TV star than a movie star. His biggest role was Simon Templar in The Saint. He was in a movie with Elizabeth Taylor called The Last Time I Saw Paris, which is based on F. Scott Fitzgerald's short story for any literary geeks out there. He played Sherlock Holmes in Sherlock Holmes in New York.
Oh, so he got to play both Bond and Holmes.
Which I think was a TV movie, and he actually was a pretty good Sherlock Holmes.
Huh.
He's in the Cannonball Run, where he basically plays himself.
Good.
He's also in Curse of the Pink Panther, which, that's the movie where Inspector Clouseau went missing.
Oh.
Dreyfus hires a detective who's even dumber than Clouseau to find him. And Roger Moore has a cameo as Inspector Clouseau, and in the movie, Clouseau got plastic surgery to look like a famous film star, so it's Roger Moore as himself doing an impression of Inspector Clouseau's accent and bumbling antics.
That's pretty good.
It's not a good movie, but the scene with Roger Moore is pretty funny. I'm not gonna lie. So yeah, his filmography, but his most famous role, obviously, is James Bond. He played him in 7 movies, including this one. Yaphet Kotto. This is his 3rd time on the podcast.
Really?
Because he's in Alien.
Oh.
And The Running Man.
How did I not connect the dots?
He has facial hair in Alien.
I guess.
Jane Seymour. She was in the original Battlestar Galactica TV show.
Oh. Huh.
Sinbad and the Eye of the Tiger. Somewhere in Time with Christopher Reeve. Head Office.
Oh, I brought that up a while ago and I don't remember why.
I don't know. But I was like looking through her filmography. I'm like, I should just include that just because why not? I don't even think that's like a well-regarded movie, but anyway.
No.
And then she's also in that Becoming Bond movie about George Lazenby that I mentioned in the last podcast, which I'm like,
huh. It's a couple movies off, but
yeah. Clifton James. I have a feeling you're a fan of his character in this.
Yes. He's my favorite Bond character.
Oh, Jesus Christ. So I was looking at, like, some of the other movies I've seen. It seems like he just plays sheriffs and everything, because...
Is that what he's typecast as?
We had him on the podcast before in Superman 2. He plays a sheriff in that.
Yeah.
He plays one in this. He comes back again in Man with the Golden Gun for some reason, and he's also a sheriff in the Gene Wilder Richard Pryor comedy Silver Streak, which I'm like, okay.
He just likes playing sheriffs.
Yes, yeah, jeez. And Lois Maxwell and Bernard Lee return, because they're in, like, basically every Bond movie for a while.
Yeah.
David Haddison, he is one of only 2 Felix Leiters that was in more than one movie. Because he also appears in License to Kill. He's also in The Fly.
Oh. So we're going to be seeing him again real soon.
Yeah, the 50s Fly, to be specific. And this isn't his first time working with Roger Moore either, because he was in an episode of The Saint.
Oh.
And in that same episode, a woman mistakes Simon Templar for James Bond.
Of course.
And I was like looking at the cast of that show recently. It's ridiculous how many actors in that went on to be in Bond movies. There's so many.
How long did the show run for?
Oh, it's like 7 years, I think. Even Moneypenny was in it. It's ridiculous. The music was done by George Martin. Not the Game of Thrones writer. This is George Martin, the music producer. A lot of people referred to him as the 5th Beatle, because he helped produce a lot of songs for the Beatles.
Oh, it's that guy. Okay.
So yeah, that George Martin.
Huh. I guess that kind of makes sense considering who did the opening.
Who did the theme song
for this movie?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that is weird though that John Barry didn't do this one, but
yeah,
because he'd done most of them at this point. Even in Diamonds Are Forever, he came back for Diamonds Are Forever, but not this one. But anyway, okay. So initial thoughts. You can go first on this one. I'm
okay. So
I'm really curious to hear this.
This is my first time watching Live and Let Die. I had seen a couple Roger Moore Bond films before. The two that stick out in my mind the most are Man with a Golden Gun and Octopussy.
And didn't you say you've seen View to a Kill as well, right?
I think I have, yes.
Basically, you'd seen all the bad ones.
exactly. So this was my first time watching Live and Let Die, and I knew that like ahead of time you had told me that they tried to make it feel like a blaxploitation film at points.
Yeah.
And the result is a very strange movie. I'm still kind of trying to process that a little bit. At the end of the day, I think it is a very enjoyable movie.
Did you watch? Did you watch this one today or?
I watched it yesterday.
Okay, and you're still trying to process it.
I'm still trying to process this because it's so jarring. Because there are a lot of moments that feel like a Roger Moore Bond film that you'd expect, but just thrown in the middle of a blaxploitation film. It is so strange. I will say it is very fun. It is probably one of the best starts Roger Moore could have had. It's like a very good first Bond film to be in. Because it is memorable. It definitely sets him apart from like Sean Connery and George Lazenby. It had a lot of really memorable moments in it. I liked both of the Bond girls in this. The villain was interesting, and his henchmen were even more interesting. Music was great.
Oh yeah.
And at the end of the day, I'm left with just one question that this movie is just ingrained in my head that I'm going to be thinking now anytime I watch a Bond film.
The question why?
the question is voodoo real in the James Bond universe, and why aren't more villains using it?
That is a very, very good question. Yeah, because like they kind of imply that they're using like technology at some points, but then yeah, it's strange because none of the other ones don't really the other ones don't really have supernatural elements like that.
No. It's really weird, but really funny at the same time. And I think it works in the context of this movie.
Yeah. Okay, so did you have anything else to add about?
I think that's it for now.
Okay. So I'd seen this one before a few times. I'll admit I've always had mixed feelings on Roger Moore's run as Bond. Sometimes I think his stuff was too silly. Other times I'm like, yeah, this is fun to watch. Moonraker, for example, is an incredibly stupid movie.
Yes.
You haven't seen it though, but
from I haven't watched it. What I've seen, it is very unique.
That's one where I have to be in the right mood to watch it. If I'm in the right mood, it's pretty fun to watch. I think what made me appreciate Roger Moore's stuff more was seeing the ending of No Time to Die.
Yeah.
Funnily enough, that ending traumatized me a bit. And it kind of made me yearn for the more outlandish James Bond movies. Nothing against Daniel Craig, but, I like some of his movies, but, it's just like, sometimes I'm like, I kind of want the sillier stuff to watch.
Yeah.
I do think Moore made one too many movies as Bond, though. Like, you start watching some of the later ones, it's like, he's getting too old. It's, like, so obvious he's not doing any of his own stunts at that moment. And at times, especially in his earlier movie, like in this one, he felt like a more goofier Simon Templar than James Bond.
Yeah.
But I do like some of his movies. Let me put it this way. My second favorite Bond movie is a Roger Moore movie. And my second least favorite Bond movie is also a Roger Moore movie. Neither of which are this one. But I do like Live and Let Die. It's not my favorite Bond movie, but it's memorable.
Yeah, it is very memorable.
Partly because this is one of the weirder James Bond movies. You can kind of tell with the early Roger Moore movies that they were trying to, like, cash in on trends at the time. This one, they're like, let's make it a blaxploitation movie.
Which I still don't understand who came up with that idea and how that got through. That's still just insane.
This one, you could definitely feel like they weren't sure what to do with this series. They're like, we don't know what to do. Might as well make this one weird. So I like that this one embraced the weirdness. That's admirable of them. Because that is one thing I find appealing about some of the Roger Moore movies. Is that they're so weird. Like, just
it's not just that they're weird, but like they fully embrace it and they try and play it as like the characters, except for like Bond when he makes jokes about it, will try and play it as straight as they can, which ends up just making the vibe just so strange.
It's because, like, we mentioned Moonraker earlier, but like Octopussy, that's one of the what is that movie? Like, some of the Roger Moore ones, they kind of feel like Inframan or Star Crash, where they're just so nonsensical. They're so nonsensical that they become fun, you know. Hell, Star Crash even has overlap as far as casting goes with the Roger Moore movies. It's kind of fun. Until now, you basically managed to avoid basically all the good Roger Moore Bond movies.
Exactly. And now I'm even more confused than ever.
For some reason, before this, you'd see, like, all the worst regarded one. Because, like, A View to a Kill is, like, awful. It's awful. And Man with the Golden Gun, that one's, like, that's not a good movie. And I mean, don't get me wrong, I really enjoy Octopussy, but not because it's a good movie. And you've also seen his first 2 movies and his last 2 movies, I realized.
Yeah, I'm missing out on the middle 3 there.
Yeah, so you're like, you got to see Roger Moore when he was younger playing Bond, and then you got to see him as him playing Bond when he's just way too old. I mean,
yeah,
especially in A View to a Kill. I mean, it's just like, what? This is a bit off topic, but I had this 2023 calendar.
Okay.
With a bunch of movies on it. Some of the picture choices were weird. I might have to send you some of them later at some point. For some reason, the Bond movie they chose to represent 2023 was Live and Let Die.
Huh.
That's such an odd choice.
That really is.
The only reason I could think is that would have been like its 50th anniversary, but I don't know. Like, anyway. Did you have to borrow this one from Jeff, by the way?
No, this one was on the Internet Archive, and this time it was not a Hindi dub.
I forgot. That's right, yeah, because which one was that? Was that Her Majesty's Secret Service?
Yes. I had downloaded it on my phone and then started watching it at work and realized, oh, this is the Hindi dub.
I wonder what George Lazenby sounds like in Hindi. That'd be... Yeah. It'd be funny if they added like musical numbers, made like a Bollywood movie. Okay. Leonard Maltin. What do you want to
Ooh,
guess?
okay. Remind me what he gave Dr. No and on on Her Majesty's Secret Service.
He gave both of those 3.5 out of 4.
I'm gonna guess he gave this one a 2.5.
Correct.
Yeah.
Sorry. He called it barely memorable. Overlong James Bond movie seems merely an excuse to film wild chase sequences. Works on level of old-time serial. He didn't even mention that it's a blaxploitation movie, but okay. Now, did he have any reactions to that, or
That's kind of what I was expecting from him, honestly.
not as good as Batman Forever?
I mean, nothing really is in this man's opinion.
Some of his other ratings for these movies are a bit. We'll get to those if we ever do some of them. Okay, so the story. Now, pay attention, 007. James Bond has to stop voodoo drug dealers. Also, it's a blaxploitation movie.
For some reason.
Oh, and Bond bangs a bunch of women.
Yeah. Including one that loses her magical psychic powers because he bangs
But
her.
I find... So we might talk about... That scene, he bangs her, and then she, wants to do it again, so he, takes his shirt off, and it's implied to do it again.
Yeah.
Okay, but for anybody that doesn't know what blaxploitation movies were, I should probably explain this a bit. Well, okay. Have you seen Jackie Brown? That's what some of them are like.
Basically.
But I guess for
Black Dynamite.
Wait, you say Black Dynamite?
Yeah.
Okay. I guess for historical context, back in the early 70s, they started making movies with black people. Who else? The name blaxploitation as the main characters to counteract many decades of racial stereotypes in cinema and just other media. Shaft, Superfly, those are good examples. They were usually crime movies, but there were tons of different genres, like westerns, comedies, martial arts films, and even horror movies, such as Blackula, Blackenstein, or Dr. Black and Mr. Hyde. Are you getting ideas for future podcasts from this?
Maybe.
But, okay, so if it was from the 70s and it starred, say, Richard Roundtree, Melvin Van Peebles, Fred Williamson, or Pam Grier, it was probably a blaxploitation film. They're pretty dated now, obviously, but there's some that are enjoyable. Hell, maybe we should review one of them at some point. And they made a James Bond movie like that for some reason.
For some reason. I do want to know whose idea this was. Who first thought of it and went, yes, this is what we're doing now.
I'm gonna laugh if it was Roger Moore's suggestion. I mean, part of it might be because I mentioned earlier the book was really racist.
Yeah.
Maybe they just decided to counteract that. It was the writer that came up with the idea. Okay, so the pros. Did you have anything to say? Never mind.
So I guess to start off with the pros,
This
it
has probably my favorite title theme of the entire series.
Yes. It is fantastic. I've been listening to a couple of them on repeat. I keep coming back to this one.
This is one of the ones I've listened to. This one I listen to a lot. Nobody Does It Better. Goldfinger, obviously. Those are like the three I usually listen to the most. This one, I love the song Live and Let Die.
The three I listen to the most would be this one, Thunderball, just because I like Tom Jones.
That's a good one, yeah.
And then Casino Royale's opening, You Know My Name.
That's also a really good one, yeah. And one I listened to a lot. It wasn't technically the main theme, but the Tomorrow Never Dies, the end credits song for that one was really good. But maybe we'll talk about that if we ever. But yeah, Live and Let Die. It's by Paul McCartney, so I mean,
yeah,
and it's just a great, like. There tends to be like the two different kinds of well, usually when I think of like Bond themes, they're usually like either like rock songs or they're like, ballads, like Goldfinger, for example. And this one, it's just like, again, this is like one of those that's like, it's so catchy. It's like, and they play like instrumentals of it throughout the movie, so it's just like.
Now, I want to know, when was the first time you heard this song? Do you remember?
I feel like I heard it before I even saw this movie.
There's a good chance you did.
It was wasn't it in like one of the Shrek movies?
Yeah, I think it was Shrek 3 is what it was in when King Harold dies. I think that's the song that they sing at his funeral.
Yeah, that's such a weird.
It's such a weird joke.
I know, yeah. Live and Let Die. But like the lyrics to it like really fit, James Bond, I think. They did a really good job of like, like there was that line, what does it matter to you when you got a job to do, you gotta do it well, you gotta give the other fella hell, that's perfect for James Bond. I mean,
yeah,
it kind of, kind of like you mentioned the Casino Royale song, it's like, it's a great rock song about like how dangerous his job is, and also just, I love the, bomb, bomb, bomb,
Yeah, no, it's very bombastic when it hits like that chorus.
Do. I want to listen to it right now. Goddamn. Okay, so
and on top of that, the visuals during that opening are also just really cool.
Lots of fire and like skulls, from what I remember.
Yeah, they're really leaning into the fact that voodoo plays a central part of this movie.
And also that song, they play the song again, but it's somebody else singing it in like a.
Yeah, I had that written down because they're at the club and then it's almost like a soul rendition of Live and Let Die.
I don't know what her name was, but it was some other singer. But before that, we get a very odd pre-title sequence.
Yeah?
I have to ask, is this the most bizarre pre-title sequence of the Bond movies?
It is very strange.
It might be. Roger Moore.
I haven't seen.
Roger Moore doesn't even appear in the pre-title sequence. It's just people.
Yeah.
It's just a bunch of people getting killed in weird ways.
Yeah, and it all seems very disconnected at first. There's one guy who is like, it's like a UN meeting, I think, and he gets killed by a noise that gets played through his earpiece. Then one person is killed in the funniest way imaginable. Where he's watching like a funeral march go by, and he turns to someone by him and asks, "Whose funeral is it?"
Yours.
And then he gets stabbed, killed, and then the funeral procession comes and picks him up, puts him in the casket, and then dances away with his body.
And like the funeral not only that, but like they're playing like a really somber song at first, but then after he dies, they start like they basically just start like partying. It's just like really jolly music and like everyone's dancing. It's so strange, the switch going on there.
And then it goes to we're in the middle of some like jungle or like a rainforest. And there's like a voodoo ceremony going on where they're sacrificing a dude. I just wrote down what is happening, where are we, why is there a witch doctor? I was so confused.
He holds a snake up to the guy and the snake bites the dude. What is going on here?
It's so confusing when you don't know what's happening already. Like, after watching the film, it's like, okay, you can kind of make some sense of it. But just seeing it for the first time, it's so bewildering.
And then they follow that with the title song, you know? Just it's so strange. And okay, so the first time we see Bond, this is one of the few James Bond movies where we see Bond's house, which is interesting.
It's always weird seeing his like house or like his apartment like we do in the Daniel Craig movies.
Yeah, here they just come and visit. Okay, M and Moneypenny come to visit Bond like in the morning, and he's like got a Bond has like a girl stashed there. He was clearly sleeping with her. And they hide her for some reason. I guess because M is a prude. I don't know. Like Moneypenny helps her hide, you know.
Yeah. She like gets stuffed in the closet.
There's some other okay. It's strange because like usually Bond just shows up at M's office.
Yeah, and this time it's the other way around.
I guess they just were like, okay, this is really important, 007, we need you. Anyway.
We need you to go stop a voodoo cult.
Yeah.
But what else is kind of interesting about this is apparently Bond is allowed to take his gadgets home with him.
Yeah.
Because he has this, like, really magnetic watch on him for some reason. They just let him keep it.
The reason why is because they didn't get Desmond Llewellyn to play Q in this one.
Oh, so they just had to have him just start with the gadgets.
I guess they're just like, okay, he already has the gadget, but anyway. There's some other interesting... So his robe says JB on it.
I don't even think I noticed that.
So I'm like, okay, James Bond is, likes putting his name on things. And we also see Bond in the kitchen making coffee at one point.
Yeah.
Which is also strange. It's just weird. You're just like, I guess, okay, this is Bond's house. Like, what did you think of Bond's house in this movie?
There was a lot of wood paneling in there, which I guess it was the 70s, but still.
It was a very 70s house.
It's a little garish.
That was another thing, like, of the Roger Moore Bond movies, this is the one that feels the most 70s out of them.
Yeah.
Just the clothing.
I think that's probably helped just because it is a blaxploitation film.
That too, yeah. And like even the way it's shot, like it just has a grittier look to it. I think part of it is also they shot a lot of it in like swamps and stuff and like
Yeah.
Oh yeah, he gets a magnetic watch which he uses to unzip a the girl's dress.
And not only that, he just mentions in passing that the magnet is so powerful it can deflect bullets. Which
does that ever come in use in this one? I don't remember.
I don't think it does, but he mentions it, and I was like, hang on a second. You can't just gloss over that, because if it's strong enough that it pushes bullets out of the way that are heading towards you, that's a really strong magnet. It's going to cause problems.
Yeah, I don't think that's possible either for a magnet to stop a bullet, but anyway.
You would need to have something that's strong enough for an MRI machine in order to start deflecting bullets.
That part was Roger Moore when he's unzipping that girl's dress with the magnetic watch. She says, "Such a delicate touch," and he says,
Just-
"Sheer magnetism, darling." We should probably talk about Roger Moore. Okay, so what was the appeal of Roger Moore as Bond?
He was very punny.
Yes, he is the
he was very quippy, very fast on his feet with a lot of really kind of dumb jokes.
Yeah, Roger Moore was definitely the king of bad puns, that's for sure. And there's a lot in this one. Like, one that I remember is when he's in the car, he hears Felix's voice coming out of like a...
Yes.
What are those things called? Like...
It was like a cigarette lighter.
It was a cigarette lighter. He like looks at it, he says, "A genuine Felix lighter. How
Felix
illuminating."
lighter.
It's just like, okay. Because I just, I watch these movies, I'm like, I kind of just shocked he was in so many James Bond movies.
Yeah.
But, definitely, people liked that he was humorous, and he does deliver the one-liners pretty well.
Yeah, no, it usually got a reaction out of me. I either groaned or I laughed.
They are pretty groan-worthy, but he does deliver them pretty well.
Yeah. I'm just reading some of these lines throughout the movie.
He is charismatic, not in the same way Connery was, but he has a confidence to him.
Yeah. And it feels like women are just drawn to him more so than I would say the Sean Connery portrayal was.
It's pretty ridiculous.
It feels like, especially in this movie, he doesn't put in any effort and they just swoon over him immediately.
Yeah. Because usually with Sean Connery, he was flirting with them first, and then they wanted to get in his, get in the sack with him. Whereas with Roger Moore, it's just he's in the room and they're already flirting with it. He'll show up at a hotel and there's a secretary swooning over him after he's when he hasn't even said anything.
And we've alluded to this character already, but there's a character who has psychic powers, and her whole thing is she can't sleep with anybody or else she loses the powers. The second she meets Bond, she's like, yeah, okay, I guess we're sleeping together. And
he also
loses her power.
He tricks her into sleeping with, because she uses tarot cards to predict what's going to happen.
The future.
Yeah, the villain, Dr. Kananga, has her to predict the future and stuff, and she uses tarot cards. Bond basically uses her own deck against her, but that to sleep with her and make her lose her powers. And that turns out that they were all the same cards, so no matter what that would have been the result. It's okay. And that's another thing about Roger Moore is he has this he's very cocky in his movies.
Yes. And nothing seems to really faze him either.
Yeah, everything's just he just winks and smiles at everything. It seems like it takes a lot to faze him, which...
Yeah.
Even when he says the line, "My name is Bond, James Bond," he seems very confident and sure of himself when he says it.
Yes. And I would say that at least in this movie, when he was, on the younger end, a bit more fresh to the role, he really looks like James Bond.
Or the Simon Templar, but maybe that's just because I've seen a bunch of episodes of The Saint. It's just like, but but watching more, like watching that show, and like watching him in this, like their personalities are like very, like his Bond is like Roger Moore's Bond is like he's way more of just a cocky asshole than Simon Templar.
Yeah.
Like he's a much more likable character in that show than he is in this movie. But yeah, like you said, it's so weird watching him in this one. He looks so much younger than he does.
Yeah, like I'm even right now. I'm just looking at a picture of him in this movie, and then him in his last movie, and it's insane. Just how much older he got. Yeah.
12 years will do that to a person. Yeah, okay, so the humor obviously is part of it. His confidence. I think also it's just for all their faults, the Moore films were eccentric enough that they stood out. And they did have a lot of elements that like made Bond films more interesting than just like your typical action movies, you know. They were just they got so outlandish that it's just like, okay,
I mean, we've mentioned Octopussy so many times.
I know.
For like a good reason, because that just goes so off the rails.
I'm so tempted to watch that one again. Like, he looks like he's having fun too. It's just like he knew he wasn't.
Yeah.
He knew he wasn't gonna compare to Sean Connery, so he's just like, okay, I'm just gonna be like, I guess the parody Bond, you know, just the goofy Bond, and sometimes that works. Sometimes it doesn't, but sometimes it works. I think here it worked in this one. I think another thing is he's definitely sophisticated.
Yeah,
which is what you'd expect a Bond. Because a lot of the other actors, like, you can kind of tell, like, they aren't, like, actually, like, sophisticated, you know, at least, you know. Whereas, for some reason, Roger Moore had that quality. Maybe part of it is he was the first Bond that was English.
Yeah. Yeah, that probably helps.
He has a good voice, too. You know, that's another thing. You know, when you play Bond, you need to have the right voice. You know,
and then this isn't necessarily down to Roger Moore's performance, but his movies also tended to have some pretty crazy gadgets with them.
Yes.
Towards the end, they kind of got a little too silly. I'm just thinking of the rope climber thing from Octopussy, but like even in this one, there's some kind of goofy ones.
Sorry, which one did you say?
In Octopussy, the rope climbing one that's still under development, where it's supposed to look like the Indian snake rope trick, except it lets the person get away.
Yeah, or the there's like one part where he has like he gets to Octopussy's palace in like a crocodile sub.
That's right.
I kind of just want to talk about Octopussy. There's so much to talk about. But yeah, for all his faults, Roger Moore did set himself apart more than, say, poor George Lazenby did, you know?
Yeah.
Roger, I think it's just because he played it so differently from Sean Connery. With George Lazenby, like, there were parts where it kind of felt like he was trying to imitate Sean Connery, and it didn't quite work. And even just like the way he said, his name Bond, James Bond, in that one, it didn't quite feel right. Whereas Roger Moore said it in this one, it felt
a lot more natural.
Yeah, it felt like he'd been playing the role for a while at this point. Although there are some parts where it does feel a little bit like he's playing Simon Templar.
Yeah, and there's also other moments where it feels more like a parody.
That too, yeah. There's also moments where it feels like a blaxploitation film. Which, speaking of which, we should probably talk about the villains in this.
Okay.
The villains in this are strange, especially Teehee and Baron Samedi.
Well, what's funny is for the longest time I didn't know about Dr. Kananga slash Mr. Big. The only character I knew from this was Baron Samedi, because like, look at him.
He's a very memorable, like, looking character with like the skull face paint, the top hat. You know, he's not even in the movie that much, and he doesn't really do much aside from laugh maniacally.
Yeah, he laughs maniacally. He gets like part of his head shot off, and it turns out that he was like a clay or like a porcelain figure.
Yeah, then another one.
He gets killed, and then he ends up being alive at the very end of the movie on the train.
Not only does he get killed, he gets thrown into a coffin filled with snakes. It's like, and he's somehow alive at the end of the movie on the train, just laughing. Okay.
Meaning that there is still this voodoo menace out in the world.
When you mentioned that voodoo, this movie kind of implies voodoo might be real. This is one of those cases where I'm like, I don't, maybe. I mean,
Because, I mean, he did live, and it felt like Solitaire did have the ability to predict the future.
from what I heard they were thinking of bringing him back for another one, but for some reason that didn't happen. You know, they brought Jaws back for another one, but I guess
honestly, it would have been really funny to see Baron Samedi and Moonraker.
He just
throw him on the moon.
He's just floating around in space, just laughing in his helmet. Yeah, that'd be pretty funny.
No, he doesn't even need a spacesuit. The voodoo keeps him alive.
Oh god. But yeah, so Baron Samedi is a pretty memorable character. Teehee is also pretty memorable.
Yes. He has like this giant robotic arm with this big claw on the end.
He's like metal pincers or something. I guess he's called Teehee because he laughs a lot. He bends Bond's gun with it.
Yeah, he destroys the Walter PPK.
And Bond doesn't even seem that fazed by it either. It's just like...
No, he's just like, damn, there goes my gun.
And like you mentioned, there's Dr. Kananga, Yaphet Kotto. He's the main villain. The main villain. And he's a pretty fun villain.
Yeah.
He's one of the...
At first they...
Sorry, what were you saying?
I was just about to say, they kind of try to do it where it's a dual identity thing.
That was...
Where you see him...
That was weird, yeah.
Yeah. Where, like, you see him as Dr. Kananga, he's like a UN, like, ambassador. And then later you see a character named Mr. Big who's supposed to be, like... I don't even know a great way. Sort of like an urban crime drug lord character, and then it turns out they're the same person, just he's in makeup when he's Mr. Big.
But it's not a very good twist because the makeup is so bad.
It looks like they just powdered his face a little bit.
It's really bad makeup. I'll probably talk about that. I might bring that up again during like cons, but with Dr. Kananga though, he's one of the few Bond villains that I think could have actually killed Bond.
Yeah, if he wasn't playing around so much with him.
He's actually pretty smart. He's also got this Solitaire's like future telling powers on his side.
That would be helpful.
At least for a while. And like when he actually fights Bond, he looks like he could take Bond in a fight, because there's that great fight scene between him and Bond towards the end where he has a knife. And also, like, it helps. He's pretty charismatic too. You want a villain with as much personality as Bond, and he's, he fits that. And some of the minor characters I thought were a bit stereotyped, but I thought the main villains at the least weren't too stereotypical.
Yeah. I will say a lot of the minor characters are a bit strange. There's one henchman named Whisper,
Yeah.
whose whole thing is he can't talk above a whisper, which is kind of a weird gimmick.
I don't know what happened there, but yeah.
Did they just run out of ideas?
And hey, say what you want about Kananga. I mean, any guy that wants to give out free heroin can't be all bad.
we should talk about his plan really quick, because it
His
is an
plan
interesting
here-
one.
Okay, so I'm still trying to have. Okay, so he wants to give out. He's like growing his own heroin, and like he's gonna give it out
Yes.
for free to like basically corner, like to get a monopoly on
Yeah.
heroin,
Yeah.
and then he's gonna start charging people for it.
Yeah, he's pulling a Walmart. He's making it really cheap so everyone comes to him, and then jack up the prices to get rich.
So price gouging was the
Exactly.
was the villain here. Okay, interesting. I guess it makes more sense than Blofeld's plot in On Her Majesty's Secret Service,
That one was just a bit convoluted, yeah.
but it's still kind of a weird plot. And then the fact he's also using voodoo. Or wait a second, actually,
Okay, hold on, yeah. That's a good point.
the fact voodoo is involved might make this weirder now. I think, okay.
It's not just that it's involved, it's that it's really heavily involved because so much of it depends on Solitaire being able to read the tarot cards.
I know, it's so strange.
And he also has Baron Samedi running around performing rituals. I'm not entirely sure what the rituals were supposed to do, but he had him on payroll, I guess.
It's bizarre. So I guess they're just I just don't even know what to say about like it has voodoo in it. I mean, what do you add to? Yes, I'm surprised they didn't have like a James Bond voodoo doll in this. That's like probably the big missed opportunity here.
Yeah. I actually am a little surprised now that you bring it up that they didn't go for that.
And it gives you some weird set design too, especially with Kananga's lairs, you know. Despite all the weird shit in it, it still does end up feeling like a Bond movie.
It does. It feels a little weird at first, but once it's like in the groove, it feels like not just like a Bond movie, but like a Roger Moore Bond movie. Especially like the boat chase scene.
Yeah, the boat chase is pretty good, but also just the ending, the whole ending of it's just like they go to his base and blow him up. You know, I mean,
Yeah.
that happens in like so many James Bond movies. But yeah, the boat chase is pretty good. It has some really impressive stunt work. Like there's like parts where they're like
It does.
they're jumping the boats over like parts of dry land and just sliding. There's like a part where
one of them lands in someone's swimming pool.
yeah, the one of my favorite parts is when the boats go on land and like crash into a wedding cake. And the bride at the wedding starts crying. I always thought that was funny. There's actually quite a lot of chase scenes. There's like a bus chase scene.
There's an airplane chase scene.
That was a fun one, yeah, with Mrs. Bell. That kind of, you know what that reminded me of? That scene kind of reminded me of that scene from The Naked Gun with the driving instructor.
A little bit. I put down that it reminded me of Man with the Golden Gun when the sheriff from this movie returns. And it's just some random side character in a chase scene with James Bond.
Yeah, yeah. Because basically, but what happened there is James Bond, like, he just... Mrs. Bell is there to get, like, her flying lessons, and then Bond decides to get in the plane. He doesn't even, like, fly the plane, he just drives it, I guess. And, like, breaks the wings.
It makes the American CIA pay for it.
Yeah, that was... I forgot about that part, how, like, the guy that was supposed to give the flying instructions, he's, like, on the phone with Felix Leiter, and you can tell he's, like, really angry.
Yeah. Can we also talk about what Bond was doing in that scene when Felix was apologizing for it? He was just getting himself a new suit tailored.
Yeah. What else do you expect of Bond? I mean...
I feel like there's other more important things to be doing at that moment.
I feel... That chase scene with the bus, I thought was pretty good as well. Like,
yeah,
like the part with it's like a double-decker bus. It's got, like, if you know what those are. Like, I like the part when they, like, the top of it, like, comes off because they go under a bridge.
Yeah.
And then a car the car that's chasing them drives into the top half that came off, ends up, like, I think in, like, a river or something.
Yeah.
There's also a lot of snakes in this movie.
There's the one that they try and drop on him in the bathroom. There's the coffin full of them at the end of the movie.
And there's at the beginning when they're, ritual. And you could probably guess which scene I'm thinking of here, though. It's, like, the part when they try to kill James Bond by putting a snake in his room.
Yeah, when they drop it on him in the bathroom.
And he's, like, shaving. So he ends up burning the snake alive on a carpet with, I think it was a lighter and aftershave?
Something like that. He basically improvs a flamethrower.
I think it was the lit end of his cigar.
I think you're right. I think he was even more badass with it.
Yeah, it's just like, okay. So yeah, that was a fun scene. I don't know if that would work, but who knows. And probably my favorite scene in the movie, it also involves reptiles. That's the scene on the crocodile farm. That's probably my favorite scene of the whole movie.
It's pretty good.
They take Bond and just, like, leave him stranded on, like, a small patch of land in the middle of a bunch of alligators and crocodiles.
Like, I feel like there was probably a more effective way to deal with a Bond.
Just throw him in.
Moment, but
throw him in.
Why give him the chance? Why put him on the island? It makes no sense.
And he, like, mentions that one of the crocodiles, like, took off his arm, and that's why he's got the medal.
Yeah. And apparently one of them's an alligator and not a crocodile. They make sure to point that out as well.
Yeah. And the way he escapes is fun, too. He tries to use his, his magnetic watch to, like, get a boat to come near him, but the boat's tied to a log, so he can't.
Which, again, that brings up the question of how strong is this magnet on his watch that he can pull a boat towards him?
Not strong enough to get it off of a log, apparently. And so then, like, the, like, crocodiles, they just all, like, come out of the water. They're just all lined up. He just runs across their backs to get away.
It's so funny.
Which I always thought that was pretty cool, actually. Definitely, that was always one of the... I always said that as, like, one of the more memorable Roger Moore moments in his movie.
So I remember that. I remember the car stunt where they played the slide whistle noise.
Oh, jeez.
When he does the Tarzan yell while swinging in the jungle.
The Tarzan, yeah, jeez. That was a weird one, yeah. That Octopussy, that's also the same one where he, like, dresses up as a clown and a gorilla.
Yeah.
In separate scenes. What a weird movie. Quarrel Jr. is in this. Because...
We mentioned him a little bit. It's an interesting callback that this is the same Bond as in Doctor No.
Yeah. So yeah, that's a kind of fun piece of continuity there. Although again, it's just kind of funny because it's like you can tell they filmed books out of order when you get to stuff like that.
Yeah.
There's these weird scarecrows that fire bullets.
Yeah, they're like voodoo dolls that I guess we haven't talked about Rosie yet.
Yeah, she's like, she pretends to be Bond's wife to
get into his room. And she's like a novice CIA agent. Like it's her second mission.
Why do they always do that? They always pair up Bond with like inexperienced agents for some reason.
And it's not just that she's inexperienced. The first person she was partnered with died.
Yeah.
Which isn't a great sign for Bond.
Bond is obviously, very excited. Yeah. She's not quite as incompetent as Good Night from Man with the Golden Gun, though.
Yeah.
Is the dumbest agent in the world.
But she's afraid of like these voodoo dolls that are hidden around hidden around the island. And it turns out that they have cameras for eyes and a gun in their mouth. And so she gets shot by basically a voodoo sentry.
That was
gun.
Another one of those parts where I was wondering if the voodoo was actually real or if they were just using weird technology to...
Yeah.
I do like I don't have much positive to say about that character, but I do like the part when, like, Bond finds out she's working for Kananga.
Yeah.
And he threatens to kill her after they've had sex.
Yeah, no, he's really cold in that scene.
She like says, "You wouldn't, not after what we've just done," and then Bond says, "I certainly would have killed you before."
Yeah.
Wow.
It's really dark, actually.
It's really funny too.
Yeah.
And I mean, to be fair to Roger Moore, as silly as his movies got, because they were so successful, they were able to prove that this series still had legs after Connery left.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, Lazenby, he was just, a lot of people like that movie, Our Majesty's Secret Service, but at the time, people just saw it as this weird one-off thing. Then Connery came back for one movie.
Which I'm sure didn't help clear up any confusion.
Yeah, and that movie, like, it made money, but, like, I mean, people don't really regard Diamonds Are Forever as, like, one of the better ones.
Yeah.
And also, Connery didn't want to do another one until 12 years later. So they're like, okay, we need somebody to, fill in the tuxedo, I guess. So they're like, okay, Roger Moore. And then after 7 movies, it's like, okay, Roger Moore... He kind of saved the series from extinction in a way.
Yeah. He's the reason that we're still getting these movies today.
And also part of the reason we almost didn't get more of it. Anyway. Yeah, the Man with the Golden Gun. I'll probably, if we ever do that one, I might talk about that one. Another thing I liked about the older James Bond movies, and that's kind of evident in this one as well, is the technology, which makes the movies seem both futuristic and dated at the same time.
There are some really funny gadgets in this one, yeah.
We mentioned the watch, and then also the scarecrows with, like, guns on them, and then, like, there's like a Baron Samity's like playing this flute or something that
Yeah,
turns into
and
a
then it pulls out, and it turns
walkie-talkie.
out it's like a yeah. It's so weird.
So there's just a lot of strange touches to this one that I really like.
We already mentioned the cigarette lighter. He has a compressed air gun where it shoots a CO2 bullet out to make things explode.
Oh my god. Okay, where the hell did this thing even come from? Was that like one of James Bond's gadgets or like
Just a personal gun that he has.
where did he get it from?
I don't. He just kind of has it.
And then okay, what he uses it for. Okay, so it's this gun that like causes things to inflate and explode. There's a part where Kananga blows up a couch with it while Whisper is sitting on it, which is pretty funny. And then when Bond is fighting him, he makes Kananga swallow one and he pushes him underwater.
It causes him to blow up like a balloon, which wouldn't happen with CO2, but that's besides the point. He causes him to blow up like a balloon, and then he just pops. It's so weird because it's like not gory. It's so cartoonish. It's like not gory at all. It's just it pops and is like smoke and bits of his suit go flying.
It looks so fake too. It's like
Yeah.
that's got to be the most ridiculous Bond villain death right there. I mean,
Yeah.
right. I mean, I don't know if anything else ever topped that one. I was honestly just waiting to hear what your reaction to this scene was because
I was a little like dumbstruck. I was like, what is happening? Where did he get this air gun? Why is the CO2 turning him into a balloon?
it's honestly pretty hilarious. Like that's another one of those
Ugh.
parts that like it kind of gives the Roger Moore movies kind of their weird, goofy charm, you know.
Yeah.
Because you never see that, like, in a... What? Actually, well, it's a little different, but we do see a person explode in a later movie, but under different circumstances.
I would love to see a Daniel Craig movie where he gets the Roger Moore gadgets.
Didn't we kind of... There were some weird gadgets in, like, No Time to Die, weren't there?
I don't really remember many. I remember Inspector, he got some...
Or am I just
Hang
thinking
on,
of
I'll
that
remember.
weird birthday party that Spectre was having for Blofeld? I don't know, but okay. And it wouldn't be a James Bond movie if he didn't have a fight scene on a train.
Yep, yeah, with Teehee at the end.
Yeah, that seems to happen in a lot of these. Like,
Yeah.
it was kind of reminding me of there's a similar scene with Jaws and The Spy Who Loved Me.
And then there's Dave Bautista Inspector.
Yeah, and then probably my favorite one is from Russia with Love. There's that great fight scene in with Red Grant. That's actually like a really well shot fight scene. Like it looks like they're actually trying to kill each other in that scene. Whereas in here, it's just like it's like a final like gotcha before we get another gotcha like right afterwards when Baron Samedi shows up.
Yeah, I guess, there were two henchmen on that train. One of them, I guess, doesn't try and kill them. He's just there to laugh.
Baron Samedi, again, he just shows up and doesn't really do much. The most of him trying to kill Bond is like, I think, doesn't he like use a machete on him at one point?
Yeah, and that's like when he gets like thrown into the coffin.
Yeah, but he gets killed by the snakes, or not killed. I don't know. I also like the underground lair that Kananga has.
Yeah. It's got like an underground... It's got like an underground monorail and like water tunnels that can let sharks in.
It wouldn't be a James Bond movie if you didn't have a villain with, like, sharks. I mean, it's
Yeah.
like-
But he also has multiple layers in this. Because he also has this bar in New Orleans.
right.
It's so funny.
It's got, like, a
Because the first
wall
time,
that, like, turns around.
yeah, okay, yeah, it's the first time Bond goes there. He sits at a booth, and the booth he's sitting in just turns around while he's there, and suddenly he's face to face with Mr. Big. And then later, he escapes, but later he comes back. He sits at a different table. He specifically says, "No, I don't want to sit at a booth." And then the floor just drops out and he falls into another layer.
I don't remember the exact line, but he says something like, I once had a bad turn in a booth or something like
Something like that, yeah.
because it, like, turned around, because it rotated. Anyway. I also like the line, after he kills Kananga. I forgot to mention this. Solitaire, like, asks, where's Kananga? And Bond says he always did have an inflated opinion of himself. So, I mean, what else would you say after that? I don't know if I've said this about a Bond movie yet, but I like the costumes in this, too.
Yeah. No, a lot of that work was really good. Baron Samedi especially looks, like, very memorable.
Solitaire's costumes are pretty good as well.
Yep, especially when she's dressed up in the tarot reading outfit.
Yeah, she almost looks like a peacock or something. It's
which Bond puts on later in the movie.
Yeah, it's strange. It's just a really strange movie.
That's the best word you could use to describe it, is just strange. Because it really does kind of feel like Bond was just picked up and put into a blaxploitation film.
It really does, yeah. And I was, like, watching some blaxploitation films, like, recently, and just going, like, this really did capture the feel of a blaxploitation film. It's strange.
Yeah.
So, do you want to get into cons, or did you have any?
Yeah, I think we can start getting into cons.
It's very dated, and
yes, that's putting it lightly.
Might be a bit racially insensitive. Granted, not quite as much as the book. The book is, god. I don't know why they thought making a James Bond blaxploitation movie was a good idea, but it's real.
A unique choice,
it exists,
and I'm willing to bet that it's never gonna happen again.
There's some words that were said in this movie that I'm not sure I'm allowed to say.
And I think, like you mentioned, there's a lot of, like, side or background characters in this that feel like just kind of bad stereotypes.
There's, like, a taxi driver. He's, like, this black dude with an afro and sideburns when Bond is in Harlem. It's just like, oh, God.
And one of his lines is, for $20, I'd take you to see the Ku Klux Klan.
It was for $20. Oh. For $20, I'll take you to a Ku Klux Klan cookout. And I'm like, oh, God.
Yeah, it's such a weird line.
During parts like that, you can really tell this was written by white British dudes. I mean,
yeah. And at one point, Felix Leiter's trying to get a car for Bond, and he says, "We need a white pimp mobile."
Oh no, I forgot about that. Oh, but yeah, it's. Thankfully, most of that is relegated to pretty minor characters, but it's still just Again, it's like we said earlier. This movie is strange.
Yeah.
One of my problems with the James Bond films of the early 70s is that they look cheap in comparison to some of the like the ones from the 60s, they had all these like cool sets and locations, and then
Yeah, like I'm kind of just thinking in my mind comparing this to On Her Majesty's Secret Service.
and that's not even like the
I,
most expensive one either. Like,
yeah, and it does look quite a bit more impressive than this one.
like I was thinking of like You'll Know Twice or Thunderball or stuff like that, or hell, even some of the later Roger Moore ones, Spy Who Loved Me and Moonraker. You can really see they throw a lot of money at those.
Yeah.
It's like you look at like this one and like Diamonds Are Forever and Man with the Golden Gun. They just look kind of dull in comparison to some of those other ones. Even like the camera work, it just looks kind of like dirtier or something.
Yeah.
And like I mentioned earlier with the Roger Moore ones, you can really tell they were trying to follow trends at the time. Obviously, this one is a blaxploitation film for some reason. Man with the Golden Gun, that had that awful martial arts scene, which I'm like, what is this doing here? Moonraker obviously tried ripping off Star Wars.
Yeah, because they had to go to space.
At times, you really got the sense that they weren't sure what to do.
They just desperately wanted it to stay relevant.
I guess once you've made this many movies, you start running out of ideas. And like, there's parts of this one where it doesn't even feel like a Bond movie.
No. And I will say, I think they did Rosie really dirty in this.
She's kind of dumb. And
yeah, she's just kind of like bumbling throughout the movie, and then she just dies.
She just screams a lot. Like,
yeah,
she's not only
and she's just
not only is she bad at like
incompetent
being an agent, she's bad at being a double agent.
Yeah.
Because she's supposed to be working for like Kananga, and she's bad at that too. It's but again, she's not as bad as like Goodnight from Man with the Golden Gun. I mean, like, Goodnight is so fucking stupid. I mean, just like I don't know how much you remember of her. But
the only thing I really remember is all the stuff with Christopher Lee at like the end of the movie.
But anyway. But yeah, Rosie Carver's pretty useless in this movie. But Mr. Big's makeup is horrible.
It just looks like he's a just slightly paler version of Dr. Kananga.
It looks like I don't know, like, how to describe, but you know what? Yeah, a slightly paler version of Dr. Kananga. That's a good way to put it. And he's got like an afro wig. It's just
like, it's strange.
It's so obvious that he's Kananga when he like peels off the makeup and reveals to Bond that he is Kananga. It's
looks
just like,
the exact same, just darker skin.
It's just like, well, no fucking shit, Sherlock. I mean,
yeah, no, when they were peeling off the makeup, I was like, is he supposed to look like someone different? Because he just looks the exact same.
I know, yeah, it's not a good disguise. I mean, he does the voice he does when he's playing Mr. Big. It's just like, anyway.
It's just a really stereotypically like an urban accent. It's so bad.
Although he does have a great line though. He like, when James Bond is like trying to say what his name is, he said, Mr. Big says, "Names is for tombstones, baby." Just like,
yeah, no, that was a good line.
Yeah. Also, there's no Q in this one.
No. Which is kind of sad, yeah.
He's a fun character. This was the first of the Eon films that just straight up did not have Q in it. Although Dr. No and From Russia with Love, he is in them. But he's called Major Boothroyd. And in one of them, he's not even played by Desmond Llewellyn, and he's played by a different guy. From what I've heard, he was supposed to be in this movie. but he was appearing in a show at the time and was like written out of a few episodes so he could have time in his schedule in this. But then the producers decided not to include him since they wanted to de-emphasize the gadgets, so that ended up pissing off Desmond Llewellyn.
Yeah.
But he came back for the next one, and I think all the ones after that. He stayed all the way up to the Brosnan ones.
Which is a really long time to play the same character in a movie series. I think
he's the Bond actor, like, that wasn't James Bond that's, like, in the most movies, if I remember right.
Yeah. Yeah.
He's gotta be. He went through 4 Bond actors. You know, he's in, like, most of the Connery ones. He's in all the Lazenby ones and all the Dalton ones. Most of the Roger Moore ones. And then all the Brosnan ones. Well, no, not all the first 3 Brosnan ones, because John Cleese ends up taking over for him in World Is Not Enough. Bet you weren't expecting to hear that. John Cleese in the Bond movie.
Yeah, I feel like I knew that from somewhere.
Spoilers, he feels very out of place in them. And I mentioned earlier, Roger Moore, it kind of feels like he's still settling into the role a bit in his first 2 movies. I feel like it wasn't until Spy Who Loved Me when he kind of felt more at ease with the role. Like, in this one, it kind of, at some points, it kind of feels like he's playing Simon Templar in this. And the movie, honestly, it kind of, you wouldn't have to change much. This could just be like a film version of, like, the Saint TV show. And that show does have like a lot of overlap with Bond. I mentioned earlier, a lot of cast members from that show are in the Bond movies. Yeah. And that show has, every episode, there's a pre-title action sequence. Just like the Bond movies. And then somebody says his name, and you see like the angel halo above me, because he's the saint. But anyway. He's Roger Moore, for me, he also has the same problem as Brosnan and Lazenby, where I feel like he was a bit too nice to play Bond.
Yeah, I can see that.
He feels a little bit too like, and whenever they did try to show Roger Moore as a bastard, like, it didn't quite work. Like, Man with the Golden Gun, for example, there's like a scene where he's like slapping the information out of a woman, and it doesn't work for Roger Moore. He just doesn't pull it off.
Yeah. And like I said, when he was threatening Rosie earlier in the movie, right after they have sex, it just felt off and wrong.
It felt maybe a little too dark for him, yeah.
Yeah. Because it felt like something Bond really wouldn't do. He wouldn't use someone for sex and then immediately kill them. That feels like something a villain would do.
Well, maybe some versions of Bond, but not Roger Moore's version of
No, no.
He's just too affable and too, like, you know... Again, he just feels like... He feels like just like a slightly more arrogant version of Simon Templar. It's kind of what I get from some of his movies. Well, he's definitely much more of a womanizer than Simon Templar. And maybe part of why Roger Moore is weird in this one in particular, he uses a Smith & Wesson for most of this.
Yeah.
Rather than a Walther PPK.
PPK.
His signature weapon. And he also wears a lot of shirts that Bond doesn't usually wear.
Yeah.
And we kind of mentioned him a little earlier. I I'm not a huge fan of Sheriff Pepper.
He feels really out of place. He feels kind of out of place in this, but he feels really out of place in the next one.
I will concede he's better in this one than in Man with the Golden Gun. And
It at least makes sense for him to be there in this one.
they're in Louisiana, a southern sheriff being there, that's not that surprising. I think he has less screen time in this one too, that might help, but
Yeah.
those parts of the movie, it just felt like Smokey and the Bandit rather than James Bond. It was just weird. Although at least we got a good boat chase. There's that. But yeah, it's just what. Solitaire. She doesn't really do much after losing her powers.
Yeah, like they kind of build her up as like someone really cool. They're like, she can tell the future, but it might not be interpreted correctly. You could have used that for some fun suspense moments. But then she ends up sleeping with Bond and then losing her powers, which just feels kind of like a cop-out.
I feel like that happens in a lot of these movies, though. But
Yeah.
maybe not, like, literally, but you know what I mean? And that's another thing. This movie implies that there's actual supernatural elements in this.
Which is really weird.
Between the tarot cards and stuff with... The fact Baron Samedi survived the movie despite being killed twice?
And there's
Question mark?
There's this...
It's so weird.
And there's this scene in the graveyard where Baron Samedi rises out of like an open grave. Bond shoots him and it turns out to be like kind of like a porcelain doll almost, but the doll's eyes are still moving and he looks clearly like they look clearly alive. And so it's like, is he just animating these dolls? Is that what's happening?
And then Bond shoots his head and the head like shatters and the eyes like roll.
It's so weird.
And then they throw Baron Samedi into a coffin full of snakes, but he's apparently still alive. And then that's not even getting into like Solitaire's powers. Like she might actually be predicting the future. Is voodoo real in this movie or not?
It feels like it is. But then that means voodoo is real in like all of the Bond movies up until the Daniel Craig stuff. Which opens so many questions.
I know. I also felt like there was barely a plot to this one.
Yeah, no, like when we tried to lay it out earlier, I kind of realized that it's also a bit nonsensical. It's a man using voodoo to make free heroin and then corner the heroin market.
And then you also have, like, just voodoo stuff. It kind of just seemed like, let's just throw in a bunch of chase scenes and stuff. We'll just see what sticks here.
We'll find an excuse later. And the best they could come up with was voodoo.
You can kind of tell they weren't sure what to do with this series.
Yeah.
You know? And there were a few lulls here and there. It has a lot of memorable scenes, but there also are a couple of boring parts, if I'm being honest.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
I feel like a lot of the stuff with like Rosie Carver, that stuff is kind of dull.
And it also feels like it just kind of goes nowhere too, all the Rosie stuff. Because she dies and then it just kind of moves on without her.
Yeah, I don't know. Or then again, a lot of the Bond movies, it's just an excuse for him to, like, shoot a bunch of bad guys and bang women. I mean,
True.
Out of the name of the game for this series. Sorry, I think we've exhausted the cons with this one. Did you have anything else to add?
No, I think we're ready to wrap this one up.
Okay, overall thoughts. If you like some of the goofier and more idiosyncratic Bond movies, you'll probably like this one.
Yeah.
Roger Moore is nowhere near my favorite Bond, but he's funny in this one. And I'd say it's one of the better Bond movies he made. The villains in this one are fun. I love the music. I mean, I can't hate a movie that gave us a song as great as Live and Let Die. I mean,
Exactly.
one of my favorite Bond themes right there. Hell, just one of my favorite songs right there. The tarot card and voodoo shit is weird, but kind of fun if you can get into that.
Yeah.
If you can get past some of the more dated aspects and the cheapness of some parts of it, it's fun to watch. There's some ridiculous parts, but those can be kind of fun sometimes. Like, I'm specifically thinking of, like, the Kananga just blowing up like a balloon. I mean, what was that? Oh, hey, lots of reptiles, and they're actual reptiles, too, you know?
Yeah.
I love the part with the crocodiles, especially. It's nowhere near the best of the series, but I do like it. I mean, it's enjoyable. And this movie taught us a very important lesson. If this ever-changing world in which we live in makes you give in and cry, say, live and let die.
Bum.
Live and let die. Die.
Bum.
God damn it, I want to listen to
All
that
right,
song.
so
I listened to that song
for me-
several times today, actually.
Same here.
Okay, so you can give your overall thoughts now.
Yeah. So, if you like your James Bonds, like, dark and gritty and serious, sort of like the Daniel Craig ones, you're probably not going to like this one quite as much. And to be fair, it is a weird one. Like we've mentioned before, it's got voodoo. It's got some pretty goofy deaths. It's got that sheriff character. And I would even say it's not really among my favorite Roger Moore ones to watch. I feel like Man with the Golden Gun and Octopussy, I just got a lot more enjoyment.
I do enjoy Octopussy more than this one. I will say that.
Yeah,
but I definitely enjoy this one more than Man with the Golden Gun. I do not like Man with the Golden Gun.
Interesting.
Although Man with the Golden Gun does have a great villain.
Yeah, and that's mostly what I remember.
Scaramanga's like one of the only good aspects of that movie.
Yeah. But, you know, regardless of this movie's flaws, it is still pretty fun and enjoyable to watch. You just have to be, you know, kind of expecting that this is going to be a blaxploitation film for no good reason. And you can have a pretty good time with it. It's got a very memorable soundtrack and opening theme. It's a fairly good start for Roger Moore for his run as Bond. And so if you're just really into like the Roger Moore-esque Bond movies, or you're just looking for something kind of lighter and a bit more fun to watch, then this one's a pretty good choice.
Yeah. I will say, though, I had to think about it. I think this is my least favorite of the ones we've reviewed so far.
I think I'd agree with you.
I think I like because we did Dr. No and Our Majesty's Secret. Yeah, I like those two movies more than this one, but I enjoy this one, though. And next time, we're not doing a James Bond movie, unfortunately.
Taking a little bit of a break.
Yeah, we'll get back to them at some point. Next time, we're doing another Two Movies Enter. This time, it's The Fly versus The Fly. Which fly will prevail?
Which fly will continue to buzz around, and which one will get swatted down?
Okay. Were you trying to do a Roger Moore quip there or something?
Maybe. Hold on. I'm looking up list of fly puns and jokes.
Well, there's a fly in your ointment. Like that. That sounds like something Roger would say. Oh, man.
I don't get this one. Anyway,
and then after that, we're doing another movie that's not James Bond, and then we're doing...
Yep, then we'll get right back into it with Timothy Dalton's.
Technically, we're doing 3 movies before we get back to doing Bond, and we will get to Timothy Dalton eventually, which I'm really looking forward to that. After, The Living Daylights, then
with that,
GoldenEye, and then Casino Royale. We'll get to those eventually. So, and then maybe we'll do more. We'll probably do more of these. I mean, it's James Bond.
Yeah, at some point.
I can't wait to do Never Say Never Again.
I can't wait to do George Lazenby's last Bond movie.
Wait a minute, we already did that. Okay, so...
Anyway, until then...
I can't wait till we do Timothy Dalton's 3rd James Bond movie. Oh, wait a second. Okay.
Good night, you stupid idiot. Good night, you miserable slob.